Good morning or afternoon. So today is a very important webinar, and I used to teach class in this. I think it was like a $3,000 or $4,000 class, and I haven't taught it in about 5 years. But this is really based on most of the things that were covered in that 12-week class. So this is anybody that's on this webinar today. You can get all the kind of nuggets from that. And the people that took the class, actually, the ones that stayed with it, I think there were a couple of people that didn't complete it, but all were able to generate business. So hopefully you will be able to as well after learning a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about today. Just if you're new to these webinars, what we'll typically do is I give up this presentation, and then after I'll take questions about this presentation or really about any questions you may have related to your career at all, and we'll get started. But the reason this is a preliminary matter, why this webinar is if you are planning on having a career in a law firm, what is going to happen is you are going to need to generate business if you want to have employment security and also for your long-term happiness, and in all honesty, because having business in a firm, your first few years are training. And then after you're trained and you know what you're doing, you're expected go out there and generate business. Now, in many major law firms, if you're working in a major city like New York or Los Angeles and so forth, they will allow you many times to work there for a decade or longer without any business. But in most cases, you do need to generate business. And once you have business, your whole career changes. It gets much more fun. You're really in the position of owning your own business, and the law firm becomes something that you don't work for, but that you employ, and you employ it for services of hiring associates, of hiring staff, of running offices, of doing payroll and so forth. But once you get business, you're basically reversing the dynamic. But the way you're reversing that dynamic is the law firm is working for you as opposed to you working for the law firm. So this is a hugely important topic, and it's something that you need to learn. And I hope you do learn today. Then you need to develop and stick with a lot of the things that I'm talking about and make it a priority. Anything that focus on will grow. And if you focus on just doing the work you're doing, that's it. In terms of an attorney, that is the exception to the rule. You will actually have less work to do in the long run many times as you get more senior, because for various reasons. But if you focus on getting business, generally it's going to grow. Today, I'm going to talk about how to get clients. I'm going to talk to you about how the people you meet are all potential clients more. People think that when there's different rules that are important in different parts of your career. So when you're a young attorney, the only way that they have to evaluate you when you're in law school, for example, is based on the quality of law school you went to and your grades. When you get out and you're in a firm, the only way that law firms have to evaluate is based on that past information. But then the new information is how many hours you're billing, where you're at, and your practice area and so forth. But if you want to be evaluated by your peer, the law firm you're in, then it's really, for the most part, for your first several years, about how many hours you work. The reason that's important is because law firms are profitable to the extent that you're able to bill a lot of hours, and attorneys that are able to do good work and turn in good work and bill a lot of hours are obviously the more favored. One of the things is, as you get more senior, what happens is your billing rate starts to rise. And when your billing rate rises, what that means is that the work that the clients want done, they typically will want partners to work on the higher billing rate work that they may have a relationship with. And then they want lower paid associates to work on the work that's more meaningful and so forth. So as you get more senior, the law firm is increasing your billing rate every year. And pretty soon your billing rate will be much higher. And what that means is there's typically more only partner level type work available. And partners are want to do their own work because they make more money, and the client is more willing to pay for work that's done at a higher billing rate if it's a partner and not someone in a service position. So that's a dynamic going on. One of the reasons why you need to get business as you get more senior, because as you get more senior, the level of work, it has to be more sophisticated. It has to be a higher billing rate. Partners typically want to do their own work as opposed to giving you that work or giving it to lower level people. So this is what let's talk about today. We're talking about how to lawyer to clients and how do you get it. As I said earlier, if you're on this webinar, it may be the most important webinar you ever attend, because what happens is the majority of law firm careers where people go in-house or they go into the government or do other things, they do come to a standstill because lawyers do not have their own clients. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter who you are. If you think you've got a great personality, if you think you don't have a great personality, everybody they can generate clients, and it doesn't really matter. They used to say, I remember one of the guys that generated the most business in LA. I used to say about the guy that generated the most business that he's the biggest nerd in LA. So it doesn't really matter who you are. Doesn't require any specific personality. It does require certain rules, but it does require understanding. Your success as an attorney will be dependent on your ultimate ability to generate clients. Because if you don't generate clients, you're not going to have long-term stability in a law firm. Your income's going to be limited. And also your satisfaction and your work is going to be limited because people get a real sense of ownership when they're doing work for their own clients. When you're doing work for your own clients, you don't have someone hovering over your head asking you questions, except for the client. You're in control. People are more thankful for the work you're doing. You have the ability to save them money, to take actions and all sorts of things. And honestly, when you're having a direct relationship with a client, that's something that most people want to do. When it's not your client, you don't have a direct relationship with them. It's just not as fun. You don't have security. You don't have the ability to relocate to other firms as easily and so forth. Attorneys with business, even if you have $500,000 or $600,000, in most areas of the country, you can really write your own ticket. The big number in big cities is at least a few million. $500,000 or $600,000 in most areas, even LA, depending on your practice area, is enough. You just need to have business, and that gives you a security. And it shows you're doing good work. It shows that clients like you and you have those abilities. And these are skills you need to develop. It's something that people don't talk to you about, because when you come out of law school, they need worker bees, but at the same time, it's something you really need to learn to have security. When you have work, you have a platform where you can hire other people. You can start your own firm. You can go to another firm. You just have all sorts of positives associated with getting business. Attorneys that have a lot of clients and that people, when they're seeking their work and so forth, I believe are happier. They're more engaged. They like the practice of law. And when you hear about people that are happy and complaining about the practice of law, the way it is, they have all these complaints. A lot of times those are people that are only doing work for others, and they don't necessarily like the people they're working for. So this is about how to get clients. There's no secrets, but these are the 9 tips. Each of them, by the way, is important. So when you listen to these today, you should think what is important about each of these, and then really think about it. And to the extent you can, take notes, but you need to do these things in order to get long-term work. So the first thing is, if you want to get business, one of the most important things to remember is that literally every person you meet is someone that's in the position to be a future client. I remembered a very famous attorney once said to me that one of the biggest mistakes he ever made was when he was in law school and a young attorney, not like basically being friends and being nice to every single person that he met, because those people would have been clients later on. And just thinking about where I went to law school, I don't know what firm it's one of the top 5 largest firms in the country, but probably the nicest guy in my law school that was most likable is now probably the biggest business generator at this big firm. So being likable is important, but just making sure that when you meet people, you realize that those are people that could be your client in the future. So what that means is, even with opposing counsel or people you're on cases with, being nice to them, doing things, sending them articles, or just not being confrontational with people, making sure people believe you have, their back, looking like a good attorney, taking the profession seriously, just realizing that when you meet people, if they like you and they think highly of you and they think you seem competent and so forth, and these are that may in the future be your clients. And people meet clients and all sorts of places. I'm just thinking, I know one young attorney that's been a partner for maybe 5 or 6 years. He's gotten clients in the strangest places, grocery store clerks that know people, like just people all over. When you're in business mode and you're thinking about this stuff, you attract that energy and the people that attract it. You need to remember that everybody around you can potentially be your client. I've seen, this is an example, janitors, and they're building, assuming clients. Someone that's selling you auto insurance may know someone, just all sorts of people just come out of nowhere when you're in this mode. And so what does that mean? That just means when you meet people, treating them well, telling them you're an attorney, and being upbeat and enthusiastic, talking about what you do with a lot of enthusiasm. I've gotten clients before just by going to parties and bragging about what I was doing for other clients, not using names or anything, but settlements I've gotten or things. And then all of a sudden, all that turned into a lot of business. So these things can lead to business and all these sorts of things. For example, janitor's son went to Harvard Law School and now he's general counsel of a major computer company, where the auto salesman is 21-year-old son could be, I don't know, again, insurance company, and just all these sorts of things happen. And this is how people get business. And when people get business, people know that you're an attorney. And so when they know you're an attorney, you have top of mind awareness. So you've probably seen BCG advertising. This was placement company that I run. And that's because we want to have top of mind awareness. We want people to think of us when they're looking for jobs or education about the legal market. And it's the same thing with you. By the time I only practiced law in law firms for a couple of years, but I mean, by the time I left, I easily had $25,000, $30,000 a month in business, which isn't a lot, but I received a lot of business just, I know, and just by talking about the fact that I was an attorney. I knew other people that were too. And based on doing a good job with people, you can, and making sure people know that you're an attorney when you meet them. They can all be future clients, but you need to realize that just everybody that you meet is a potential client. What that means is the more you get out there and the more you're socializing, the more you're going to events, the more you're volunteering, the more things you're doing, the more opportunities you take to speak or do things, that the more opportunities you have to get business. That means attorneys get on boards, they do all sorts of things. And these are things that you need to prioritize, and you get involved in these activities because you want to and because they appeal to you, not so you can get business, but business will flow from them when people see you out in the community and doing things. And it's very common in smaller markets and small towns for the local attorneys to be involved in everything and all sorts of organizations. And at the same logic that gets them a lot of business in smaller markets also works in larger markets. So you need to do that. And it doesn't even matter if you're with an ultra expensive or prestigious law firm or a smaller law firm, just getting out there makes a difference. So I knew one attorney that lived in a small town outside of Los Angeles, and he'd grown up there and was on the board of a small hospital. And then that became a huge client of a New York-based law firm I was working with, where he was charging them millions of dollars an attorney for some case. And so even that small client in a small town turned into something big because he was on the board. So all these sorts of things, just getting involved, make a difference. What you need to do too is, one of the things is when you're out in the community, and this is an aside, but when you're out in the community and talking to people, what you do is what I do is I would always talk about how I help people and how people got value from using me and how you can do this. And so it's not just I'm an attorney. You have to talk enthusiastically about what you're doing, and people need to think that you're their advocate and they're behind, and you get behind your clients when you're enthusiastic about it. Because when they see, that's when people bite, when they think that you have their back. And so I think that's a very important aspect of just being out there. You talk about the things you're doing that you're excited about. And then people are like, wow, this person's good, because anybody can be an attorney. Anybody can put their head down and just and do their work. And I'll tell you, it's an interesting story. This week we have an opening at our company for an in-house counsel, and I've been interviewing lots of people. And for the most part, when you're interviewing people, like, they're not enthusiastic. A person I interviewed this morning was extremely enthusiastic, but most attorneys, when you're interviewing them, they don't step up and they're not like, this is what I did. This is how I helped this person. This is how I saved them money. This is what, or this is how I won this victory for this client, or this is how I did this. Most of the time, these interviews are a little bit different. They're more like people are a little suspicious or on guard, or they're not excited to talk about their job. And so you need to be, to get clients, the client needs to think that you're going to be enthusiastic about them and have their back, that you're honest and all these sorts of things that we want. And that's what people want to hear. And so how you act towards others is really going to determine whether or not they want to be your client in the future and how they perceive you. And so you should take no one for granted. That's just a very important point. You don't want to take any vendors for granted. So people do work for you or that you encounter, always be nice to them if you can. Your dry cleaner, all these people that many times you believe are below you, many times have a lot of people above you. I remember there was and what I grew up in Detroit, my mother had a maid, and the maid that cleaned her house, her daughter was a partner in the largest law firm in Detroit. It's just all these things can help you. So you need to also stay in touch with people if you can. It's not just vendors, but others. If you can, Christmas cards, all that sort of thing. There's attorneys that I work with when I was practicing that still send me Christmas cards. And then the first people I think about are, I guess we call them holiday cards when I have work. I just hired one the other day. I worked with hundreds of attorneys in my career, but the ones that remember me on stuff make me feel good. So I use them. Your peers and subordinates are people you should never take for granted. The biggest source of business is often going to be, especially if you're a young attorney, the people you're working with right now, or the attorneys that are younger than you that you're supervising. All those sorts of people that you're working with are major sources of potential clients. If they think highly of you and they see you're honest and they see that you work hard and you're enthusiastic, they will likely work with you in the future. So stay in touch with those people. Those are people that can help you and that you should always, whether or not it's being friends with them on social media or updating them or asking them how they're doing, these are people that are going to help you. And so you need to remember that. It may not seem like it now. When you're competing with people in your firm or supervising people, you may think that those are people that can't help you, but they will. And most of the attorneys that I've worked with in my career that I've hired that have made hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in fees for me, have been people that supervised me, that were my bosses when I was practicing law. And I saw that they were fair and honest and worked hard. And so I hired them. But the other thing is college, law school, employers. Some of my first clients were people I went to high school with that realized how seriously I took school and things. And the second I was an attorney, you're going to hire me. So those people, and these are people that I stayed in touch with. So these are people that can help. And just everyone that you come in contact with can be a future client. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you having disagreements and so forth, but it does mean that if you try to avoid disagreements and you try to have positive relationships and they think highly of you, that they're going to be future clients. Relatives can be a huge source of business, which I don't know that it's always a good idea to represent your clients, but they will go out of their way to tell people you're a lawyer. And if you tell them how well you're doing, they will tell other people as well. And then they will send you work. And all of this stuff, by the way, it's like the people that generate a lot of business, you have to think of, I call it the Parthenon principle. So it's not just your relatives, it's not just your peers, but it's all these things together. If they're working very well, they build a whole large network of business for you. Everything works together. And then former employers are also a great source of business. When I started practicing law and I saw a lot of people that would leave firms and they would be huge sources of business. The firm would be huge sources of business for them. Would send them all sorts of clients they didn't like. The firm didn't want to work with them because there was conflicts or whatever, or it was the kind of work that was below their pay. I saw one attorney, by the way, this is very interesting. And he was referred a case involving some giant social media company. He was referred a case by his firm and by a firm he'd worked at years ago. He couldn't work on it. And so he gave it to another firm and it ended up settling for hundreds of millions of dollars. And this guy got a check or something for 30 or $40 million just for the referral after this all happened, retired. And he was in his late 30s. Just these referrals you would be amazed how much the stuff can help you. This is a true story, by the way, but just by being nice. You shouldn't take people for granted, especially your former employers. You want to do whatever you can to be nice to them. I saw another incident that was interesting. I was clerking for a judge in a small town and in Michigan, a federal judge, but it was not a small town, but it wasn't a big. One of his former co-clerks wanted to, work in the public defender's office and represent clients or something. And he didn't approve that because she didn't have a good relationship with them. So that hurt her. So it's just, you need to make sure that your former employers like you if you can, and really not burn bridges there. So all these people, and it's hard because disagreements happen. People think they're right. Other people think they're wrong, but the cleaner you keep your nose and the more you learn these lessons, the better off you're going to be. So former employers are often the absolute best people to get. And if you can, always avoid burning bridges, cutting corners, all that sort of stuff. It's just very important. Your former employers can be your advocates. People's entire careers can be built on referrals from former employers. I once saw a law firm in Los Angeles grow to about 70 or 80 people based on a referral, one big client from someone's former employer, if you can imagine it. And then the firm got arrogant, raised its rates on the client, and client was literally like 95% of their business. And when the client went elsewhere, the firm collapsed. But I mean, that can be huge. And then your superiors, you shouldn't take them for granted. These are all, and it's just the same thing over and over again that I'm saying, but you just need to really realize that impressing your superiors and so forth is very important. All these people, if you do extra work and so forth, and they respect you, and you make them feel good about themselves, they can help you. You really need to do whatever you can to impress superiors and other people and have them like you, because they will go out of their way to help you. They can. And there's really no one that you should take for granted. Because all these people can help you in the future. Everyone you encounter is really going to be a good source of business for you, really can be a good source of revenue. Now, one of the, and I'll tell you, like one of the big secrets, what is it? You may ask yourself, what is it people do to generate business? And if you had to start generating business right now, what would I tell you? If I had 1 hour with you, which I guess I do, what is the best way to generate business? What is the best way to get a job? And this one course that used to be a very popular course. It was before the internet and before they used to send it around on a tape and then you would buy it. But essentially what the course was, you write down the names of all the people you've known. So all your relatives, all of your former work colleagues, all of your friends, all of your classmates, anybody that you know, and then you reach out to them with a note or a call, or you make contact with them. And when they ask you what you're doing, you tell them I'm an attorney and so forth, or you talk about how well things are going and what you're doing. And if they ask, but you ask about them and you check in on them, and you don't offer to sell them, you just do that. And that was really honestly what the entire, this is material that I taught in my course, but this was the most popular course through the 70s, 80s, and part of the early 90s about how to get business. And essentially write it down, everybody make contact with them, hope the business comes. And it actually, that way of getting business works. If you've just listened up until now and you do that consistently and make contact with those people, you will develop a large book of business over time. But the most important thing to remember about this exercise is as you go through it and as you contact those people, you'll see that there's a lot of people that you may burn bridges with, that you didn't have good relationships with, which is normal. But there'll be a lot of people that you do. And so just telling those people how you're doing, those people will be very happy to say, I know this attorney when things come up. And so suddenly you'll have not just you looking for work for you, but 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 people that you're making contact with on an ongoing basis. And so that's one of the reasons that it's important to never take anyone for granted and to reach out to people. And this is what the most successful people do. This is how arguably Bill Clinton became president, based on this incredible Rolodex of contacts that he'd been building and having a good relationship with, some even in college, and he would keep note cards of everyone. So every single person you meet is very important. And I just imagine one person out, all these people out there, happy to give your name to people when they know when someone asks for an attorney. It's huge. I really hope you understand this first component of the lesson that I'm giving right now. Okay. So one of maybe this is the way I do it. So I'm going back. We're trying to, there we go. So the second thing is, and again, I just want to reemphasize this, just making sure that you write down all your contacts, you realize everyone you meet is a source of business. Just think about that. And then the lesson that I gave you about writing all those people down and making contact with them. Okay. So if you want to get business, the next thing you need to do is you need to talk about your work. And I don't know, it's more than 20 years ago now, but I was in a class in franchising. And when I was in law school, I remember they took us to part of the class, this attorney took us to a ballroom where this attorney was giving a 3-hour PowerPoint presentation about developments in franchising law. And when I'm telling you, this thing was packed. They invited all the owners of Burger Kings and McDonald's and different franchises in Charlottesville to this. The man speaking must have been in his early 70s. I was required to go to this, and it was literally one of the most boring. I still can feel the boredom in my skin because it was so bad. Everyone was sitting there watching this, and I was looking around and making eye contact with other students, and maybe he was in his mid-60s. I seemed older to me at the time, but just remembering it. But this guy was wearing a bow tie and speaking for at least 3 hours on. It was just very boring. It was just like, then this law was passed, and it was all these people that could care less. So most people that own franchises are not necessarily, they're not attorneys. So it's 3 hours, and even the lawyer that was giving the presentation seemed bored. It was the kind of thing where he was giving this PowerPoint and he would skip a slide and not even realize it and just keep talking. It was anyway. And when people were not making eye contact, it was so boring. But the thing is that at the end of this, what happened is the guy was at the end of this presentation, all the attorneys or the local franchises that have been invited to this event all stood in line, and they, to talk to him, and they all appeared very interested in what this guy was saying, even though they couldn't have possibly done. No one really even knew what the guy was talking about. They realized that this guy must be an expert, and when they needed an attorney, they needed to talk to him. And so the point is that this guy was talking about franchising law. These people had franchises. He was out there in the community talking about something about what he did. He must have gotten a lot of work that day just from that exercise. What I realized is that just because the guy, just because he was talking about this, law firms presumed he was, or the franchisees presumed he was an expert and were eager to hire him, and it worked. And so if you think about it, when you want to find people for assistance, you find the people that are visible. So if you need a certain type of doctor, or you need something specifically, like the person that you're going to call, the person that you're going to make contact with, the person that's going to be visible, you're going to see this talking about their work. Now, it's even more important if that person is visible. So I'll just tell you a quick story. So I had this guy I knew in Malibu, and someone had done something to him. I don't know, his business partner or something. I'm an attorney. So I wrote a letter, then I just filed a simple lawsuit, and I settled the case for him and it wasn't even, I couldn't believe it, but for $400,000 or $500,000. This was a couple of years ago. And then, this is not what I do. I'm not a practicing attorney, but I have a law license. And so I did this for him. And then I met someone at a party, and I told them about what I'd done for this person. Then, so the guy came to me and said he had this dispute, and would I do the same thing and write him a letter and everything? And he gave me $50,000 to do it, which is a lot of money. I did the same thing for him. Unfortunately, he got more than his money back, but it wasn't the same thing. So sometimes if you're an attorney and you talk about what, just like I did, people will come to you and just ask you for help. And I thought it was very interesting. These are just two people that came out of nowhere and asked for help. And one of them, because my wife at the time told the wife of this guy that I was an attorney could help them. And the other one, because I just talked about the help that I got him at a party. So the point is, you have to talk about, and I'm not even a practicing attorney. Like, I haven't been a litigator in forever, but I know how to file complaints, all those sorts of stuff, and write letters. But the point is that if you talk about things that you do, you will get a lot of business. It's very easy, but you have to get out there and talk about what you're doing. You have to have a presence online. I once hired an attorney that got hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees because I had a property matter, and he was the only person I could find that had ever written about it. So you have to be excited about things. And you have to be out there talking about and that means writing, it means speaking, it means when you are parties talking about things, it means giving public talks, it means all these things, but you can't just sit behind your office and work on something. Like, one thing that's very interesting, like, for example, there's attorneys in big firms in New York that are specialists and only working on one type of contract and one aspect of that contract. If I had a job like that, I would write articles about all this aspect of this contract. I would put together presentations about it. I would go all out, because if that's all I did, I would make sure that everyone realized it, because I would want whatever company ever needed help with that to get me. I knew one woman, or I still know her, that's a former candidate of mine, and she became an expert in servicing software as service businesses, like doing their contracts. Was the only person out there, like, with a website dedicated to it and giving talks about it and so forth, and worked at a major law firm. And then when she was like 8 or 9 years out, like, they were like, okay, time for you to do something else. She started her own firm and now has a, booming business doing nothing but that. And she's the only person people can find when they need these contracts and so forth. So you need to get out there and talk about what you're doing. You need to, and it's more about just giving talks. It's about being enthusiastic about what you're doing, and having a passion for it, and talking about what you do with people in your office. I used to, when I was practicing, be very enthusiastic about, writing briefs and paring them down and making them shorter. And then pretty soon by saying the same thing. So just basically aggressively editing briefs. And so people started coming to me for that. And then, in the office, and then talking about your work with your clients will get you referrals, and just being very enthusiastic about what you do. So a lot of people just are thinking they're just doing work, and that's not what you're doing. You're actually developing a skill, and then you're talking about it. And then you think about, like, how does what I know, how can I help people? How can I help make them money? You need to sit in the shoes of your clients and think about what is it that's motivating them, not just like, how can I make money, or how can, I do this, or do I have to do this work? You need to think about, how is what I'm doing, how can it help them? And the reason it's so important is, who would you want to hire? So the example is, I'm interviewing like all these in-house counsel right now. And yesterday I interviewed someone, anyway, it doesn't matter, but a lot of people are from big firms, when they just sit there and they're like, yeah, I've done that. And they don't talk with a lot of enthusiasm. They're not they're not excited about the work that they're doing. And so why would you want to have someone that, is not enthusiastic or doesn't love what they're doing? You need to find someone that loves what they're doing. And your peers need to think about that. So my example is when I was very enthusiastic about writing briefs or whatever, people need to remember you as someone that enjoys their work and is enthusiastic and gets results. And so you need to think about your work like that. Every piece of work you do should be something, that's memorable. I know a lot of the most well-known and the attorneys that have the most business that I know of, but they're very enthusiastic. They actually keep big files. Like I know one attorney that was a very well-known privacy attorney. And this attorney just kept, since he's been like a first or second year associate, has kept files of all this privacy information and built it up so he can always pull things out when he needs them. And he talks about it, he knows about it, and he's good. And it matters. When I'm hiring attorneys, like sometimes I was looking for an attorney recently to handle something. And I called this one attorney that was recommended, and the attorney, I used to work this firm. Have you heard of it? And I hadn't heard of it because it doesn't matter. But then the attorney was offended and couldn't talk with any enthusiasm about the work they did. I just got a really bad feeling. So you have to think about you have to think about how to talk about your work and how to talk about it with enthusiasm and how to get out there and talk about it with enthusiasm. Because if you do that, you're going to be able to get a lot of business. People want to hire people that they know about. Any attorney that gets famous in anything, whether it's attorneys you may have heard of that are famous personal injury attorneys or whatever, they're people that are out there and are seen. And so you need to be seen, and then you need to be seen as someone that is enthusiastic and can get results. So you need to speak about it and you need to talk about it. And that's how you do it. One of the most effective marketing lines I've ever heard was you can build a better mousetrap, but if the world doesn't know about it, they're going to beat a path right around your door. And you may be a very good attorney sitting in a law firm somewhere, but thinking that people are just going to find you. And that's just not the case. It's the people that are known about that are generating business and work. That's how it works. It's the people that other people have heard of. It's the people that are seen that are generating business. And in every law firm, there's people that just think that they're very good at their work and people should come to them. And those people pretty much never succeed at the level that they're capable of. It's people knowing about you and thinking that you're enthusiastic. And restaurants, and why do you think a restaurant puts billboards on the highway? And it's because they need to be seen. And the same thing, every business out there needs to be seen. And I hate PC. I'm actually allergic to beans. And there's a restaurant, actually, it's not, I may be in Ohio, but I know there's also one in California somewhere that brags about its pea soup. And so people know about it because of the way it advertises it, and because it's just all over. So it's the same thing, like anything you advertise or talk about, people will want to buy. So you just need to talk about what you're doing. You just can't be, I don't know, you can't be quiet about it. You need to get out there and please do it. Please treat the people you meet with respect. Talk about the work that you're doing, any chance you get, and get in touch. And if you're not excited about the work that you're doing, you don't feel like you can talk about it, then that's a problem, because the people that can talk about the work are the ones that are going to get hired. And that means that you may be, frankly, not in the right profession, which is okay. You need to be able to talk about the work that you're doing enthusiastic, because you will get clients if you do that. If you don't, you won't. And I'm telling you, that's all you need to do. You need to be in touch with people. You need to make new contacts and talk about your work, and you will get work. I could, and don't have any superpowers at all, but I could literally develop a very big law practice just by contacting people that I know and getting out there and talking about it. And that's it. That's all you need to do. Some people in law firms, what they do, by the way, too, is when a lot of times when people make partner, the first thing they do is they're like, okay, spend an hour a day calling people and, businesses and telling them about what you do. You have to get out there and talk about it. That you have no choice. And when you do that, great things happen. I've met some of the biggest a-holes in the world that are attorneys. And when I say a-holes, they're not the most pleasant people. They don't even have very good people skills, but they're able to develop large books of business at a very young age just by doing that, getting out there and talking about what they do. That's all. Okay. So the next thing you need to do is you need to set a good example if you want to get business. What does that mean? It means you act like the type of attorney people would want to be represented by. And that means, what does that mean? It means you're honest. You act like someone who has someone's back. You're not playing games with clients and cheating them. You say what you do, what you say you're going to do, and all that sort of stuff. And the second you start cutting corners or cheating or doing things that appear more in your interest, and the clients will run. Clients are very concerned about your level of honesty. And so I will just tell you up front, you may be the most honest person there is, but a lot of attorneys are not honest. They play games and so forth. And I've seen that many times. And so I do not want to hire attorneys that are dishonest. And especially when you're talking about billable hours, they will play games with that. That's very dangerous. I knew when I was practicing law, I saw lots of attorneys make up hours. I don't need to get too much into it, but I remember there's an associate I was friends with. He worked all weekend on something, and then he turned in something at the end of the day or at the end of the weekend, Monday morning, and then went in a few hours later, and the partner had written down that he'd been working all weekend, basically on the thing that the attorney had done as well, which was true. Partners will make up time, associates will make up time. And that's one person I will never give work to, obviously, when I find out about that. So you just have to be very careful. And everyone knows that attorney's dishonest. All the attorneys in the firm will learn about who's dishonest. And so if you're dishonest, then word gets out, and you just have to be very careful. You're always being tested. You're being tested for your honesty by partners in your firm. I once saw someone that was days away from being made partner in a major law firm lose his job because he said that he sent a letter that he hadn't sent. So people are testing you for your honesty. And so once they think you're honest, and you're in good shape, and everybody wants to deal with honest people. So you need to set a good. Another example that I hate to bring up, but I should, just because I certainly wild in my time. Attorneys that go out and have a very wild time, meaning they're partying late, they're who knows? I've seen all sorts of things. I've seen it doesn't matter. You can think of drugs or too much alcohol all the time, weekly or who knows? Or people that are philandering, meaning running around people that they're not married to and so forth. All that doesn't reflect well on you. It can hurt you. There's a famous story, by the way, about Donald Trump. And this is in the early 90s, like maybe 90, 91. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Trump, he was married, and everyone knows who Trump is, but he was married to Ivanka. And then at some point he met Marla Maples while he was married and started an affair with her. And word got around that he was doing that. All the banks called his loans. They said, okay, we want our money back right now. I think some of his companies went bankrupt. He almost went personally bankrupt. And obviously people are in unhappy marriages and do things that are wrong. What that communicated to the banks was just unstable. And the banks were like, we don't trust our money with someone that's unstable like this. This is a good idea. So it's like that with clients too. If clients see you as unstable, then that's a problem. I've known attorneys before, and some that I've been friends with, that have gone out on interviews and had 3 or 4 drinks, and firms were just like, no, even though they were basically the person was hired, or they were hired, the law firms withdrew the offers, or people that have done things like that. So clients are the same way. They see that there's any type of instability with you, regardless of what it is, they may want to not have anything to do with you. And law firms, clients, and so forth look for people that have a certain level of stability, meaning they want you to conduct yourself in a certain way. I've seen partners at major law firms. It's stupid, but they have literally get bad reviews or be told that you need to look for a new job because they maybe had too much to drink at a Christmas party or something. So all this is, I'm not trying to say that you don't have to enjoy yourself, but you have to be very careful in terms of how clients view you and how they can portray you. Because if they see you setting a good example and you're responsible and so forth, then that steadiness is something that's respected. Now, I'm not saying that you have to approve of that or anything. I'm not saying that I judge you one way or another. If you like to go out and have fun, which everyone does, and certainly when I was younger, was pretty far out of control. But the point is that you have to be very careful and realize that clients do want a level of steadiness. So you're their representative, and as the representative, they expect you to act a certain way. Many times they expect you to, dress a certain way. Many times they need you to be as a role model, many times as opposed to the opposite. I don't like giving these examples that much. You just have to realize that if you set a good example and you play by the rules and so forth, then people will want to do more work with you. Clients are, the second they see a sense of issues, they can become risk averse to some extent. The other thing that's important, this is a big one, is they you need to be interested in other people and their issues, and you need to be able to talk about their issues. I remember a very good banker. I was buying a building a long time ago. Not a well, it wasn't even a building. It was what was it? It was yeah, it was a small building. But I was buying a small building years ago, and I was talking to a banker that became a head of the bank or head of the banking division at U.S. Bank, and he was saying, "What did what is it you're looking to buy?" And then he asked me questions about it for a half hour, and but he was just asking, "Oh, and it's got that kind of room." And I realized when he was asking this, he couldn't have been. How could somebody possibly be interested in? And what it was actually was a veterinary hospital. I was thinking about turning into an office, and but he was asking all these questions like, "How could this freaking guy be interested in this stupid?" And he wasn't, I don't think, but what he was doing is he was allowing me to talk about what was interesting to me. And that's one of the reasons he became so successful. And so it's the same thing with lawyers. So you have to be interested in people's problems and you have to talk to them about it, listen to what they're saying, and you have to want to listen. It has to excite you and you have to listen to the most, like the things that may not seem interesting to most people. And you have to try to figure out how to get interested. When you do that, when you're interested in other people and their legal issues, that's very helpful. I don't know what to say, but people want you to be interested in things and they love it when people are interested in their issues. And so you need to be interested. And so one of the things like when I remember one time I hired, and this isn't legal related. I had this I was selling and I'd done all this work on it. I was young and I don't know, I put in heated floors and I don't know, just done all these projects and stuff. And I was extremely excited about it and very happy about all the work that I'd done. I tried to tell a real estate agent I was hiring about it. He could care less. His eyes glazed over and he started talking about other things. So he wasn't the person that I hired. I hired someone that acted like they were very interested in it. And that's what you need to do as an attorney. When someone comes to you with a problem, you need to act like you're very interested in it. And they need to believe you're interested in it. And then you need to let them talk. And that's very important for clients. And it's something that even at our company, when an attorney is looking for a job, there's generally same reasons over and over again. I mean, at least that's what I've found in the decades that I've been doing this, but I still want to listen and I still want to understand. The same thing with the people that work with us. So our workforce. So you need to be interested in people's problems and they want you to listen because they need to talk about it. It's the same thing if you're looking for a job, you need someone to listen to what's important to you. They need to feel acknowledged. And so a good lawyer is going to be very interested in other people's problems. And you just need to do that. And you need to ask them questions. They need to believe you have their side and understand the matters. It's about having others' backs. There's a lot to this. It's a big deal. It's not easy, but you need to do it. And these listening skills are very important for getting clients. People do not want to do business with people that aren't willing to listen to them. They won't, and you won't either. So if you're looking for an attorney or a doctor that doesn't allow you to talk about what's wrong, or a therapist that's not interested, or an attorney, or someone that imagine going to a car repair person, the person not listening. So people need to be able to listen. And need to take times to understand people's problems and listen to them. And then even better, understanding them as people. So one of the things that one of my mentor, who's no longer alive, would always do is he'd always have boats. And so every person that was his client, he would always make sure that he invited them to his boat and spent evenings with them. And so every Saturday he would have someone booked to do that. That was very important. So you need to, if people are going to feel connected to you, you need to also try to bond with clients in a personal matter as well and learn about their families and stuff. And the more you do that, the deeper the connection and the more the person's likely to stick with you. But you need to, there does need to be a personal component to all this and people need to feel invested. So allow people to speak with me. It's very important to do. A few years ago, I was speaking to a branding company and these companies were both about the same price. They're about $250,000 each, I think. And the company was my first choice, invited me to come to their office. And I had several things that I wanted to talk to them about. So they invited me to their office. It was in West Los Angeles, a nice area. When I got there, the representative of the company spent all the time talking about him, like how big the company was, people they'd done work for in the past, how great their employees were, all this sort of thing. And never gave me the opportunity to talk about what I wanted the brand to represent and all those sorts of things. And so I ended up not using the company. So the people that are the most interesting to us are typically the people that we like the most and that show the most interest in us. Another one of my mentors tells a story that he was on a plane at one time and for some reason, he decided he was going to just let the guy next to him talk. And the guy started talking or asking him questions or something. And so the guy just started asking the guy questions back. And so they sat there in this cross country flight. And for 4 hours, he asked this guy questions about himself and didn't say anything about himself at all. And when they flight landed and they were getting off, the guy said, "This has been the most interesting conversation I've had in a long time. I really enjoy talking to you. Can I have your card?" and all this stuff. And so, but the point is that my mentor didn't say anything. He was just, the guy had no interest in him. He just wanted to talk about himself. And so that's how clients are too. You need to let them talk, make them feel acknowledged. And if you do that, they're going to like you. Be interested in other people. It's going to make them that you're interested, even if you're not. I don't know why someone would be interested in you if you're not talking for hours, but that's just how it works. You have to be interested in others. And if you think about the people that have the most business in your firm or in places you work, they're probably very good at allowing other people to talk. And that's important. So you need to follow that. Then the final thing is the legal profession is a service profession. When you look at the world, a lot of things are about self-importance and your ego and how people look to others and all this stuff. But when you're in a legal role, your role really is to be a servant to other people. And even the most successful attorneys, I know attorneys that have huge books of business, but they'll still say, "Yes, sir," "No, sir," and all this sort of stuff. And you're there to serve other people. And what that means, you're there to be a servant and to look out for other people's interests. So you're there to take care of your clients. And even the most successful doctor in the world, the most successful attorney in the world still has clients when you're working for someone else. And so you want to learn more about them and you want to be able to serve them better and you want to understand what kind of people they are. And the more you can assist them, it's very important. And then you'll have more work, extremely important. And then this is a fairly simple, obvious statement, but the lawyers who want to get business need to get out there and have relationships. And you need to start somewhere. It's difficult. So you need to expand beyond your comfort zone. People get comfortable. If I sit in my office all the time and never leave, that's where I'm comfortable. But you need to challenge yourself. You need learn how to break down the boundaries of formality, form relationships outside your relationships in circles of influence. The attorneys that are very successful when they get older are often people that they're able to figure out organizations and things involved in outside of work. And they do that. And that means they go to events, meet other attorneys, they just get involved in things. And it doesn't really matter what you're involved in. You can be involved in all sorts of things. You can be involved in sports groups and volunteer groups and other things, but you need to do something to really have more different places where you can meet people. And you don't want to be like someone that's just going somewhere just to meet someone. That's not the purpose. The purpose is really to give you more dimensions to the kind of person you are and to have interest in other things, but in areas where you can meet people. And so you just need to get involved in things. And every attorney with a lot of businesses always that I've ever met is always somehow getting involved in something. It could be in things that you wouldn't even consider that important. You could be doing, as one example, I was taking, this is recently, 3 or 4 years, or maybe, or 5, 3 or 4, 5 years. I used to take acting classes and because I thought that was fun. All these people in the acting classes found out I was an attorney and started coming to me to represent them. Now, these were not certainly paying money, but at the same point, a couple of them ended up making decent sized movies and being on television shows. So they would be my clients now if I was doing that. They just knew I was an attorney. They didn't know what I do, which is this, but the legal placement. But at the same time, that's a way to generate business. And so all these different things you come in contact with, any place you go and tell people you're an attorney, people will, and especially if you're going to groups like that, people will seek you out. You will form relationships that will lead to things in the future. That's just how it works. It's a gift. And so you could do acting classes, you can do anything, and that could lead to business. It's just how it works. Any form of relationship can be good. I remember I used to have a business when I was very young, actually not that young, but when I was in my teens and 20s, I had a business where I was going out and doing asphalt work around Michigan. I would do residential work and I would do commercial work. But when I would do the residential work, there were always attorneys and there were always a few that would talk to me. And I can remember them to this day. I know exactly who they are. I can remember their house. I can remember that they would say, "Oh, you should incorporate and do this and that." And then they would talk to me and give me forms and tell me they could help me and so forth. And that's great because those are people that I would have thought about had I stayed with the business. Those would be attorneys that I would be using now. And so just any type of contacts you can make like that, social or otherwise, are huge. And wow, I'm just thinking about how much business. So you get out there and form relationships. The other one is you need to specialize. This is very important, but most people do not, the general public doesn't know about specialists, but if you specialize, it can make a huge difference. Being a specialist in something, if you're the only person doing that, it's like the smartest thing you can possibly do in the world. Very few people are actual specialists in something. So if you can be a specialist, that's very helpful. It means you're seen, and again, I told the story earlier, but anytime I'm looking for an attorney with a certain type of skill, like I may be looking for someone that has experience dealing with a specific type of dispute involving a specific law. And you can find people like that by doing research. And then those people are much more likely and very difficult to find a certain type of attorney. So in many markets, there may only be one. And so then that specialist will be found. If you're a specialist in something, and you talk about the fact you're a specialist and enthusiastic, then anytime a certain matter comes along, people will want to work with you. And this is just an example. In 1997 through the middle of 2000, you had a good idea that you could make money on the internet. At the same time, lots of people were losing money. So people would start all these different businesses. And this is a long time ago, but a lot of people were losing money. But the idea is that the people that were making money were always doing very simple things. So they might set up a business selling bird cages for canaries, or just something stupid that sounds stupid, or replacing batteries for cell phones or cases for Palm Pilots. The reason that they were finding this was they were only people, if someone needed one of these things back then, they were the only people that were being found. So people became gazillionaires doing this kind of stuff. You needed a bird cage and we're selling bird cages. You'd want to hire the person that appeared to do that. And even today, there's still like lots of people on the internet selling different things that are very specialized. So if you needed an attorney to help with a certain regulation of franchise law, you're probably going to hire the one you find when you do a search on the internet. You need to think about how are you positioning things with your bio for your law firm website. Are you writing articles? Does your LinkedIn profile show up? What is it about you that looks special when someone's looking for whatever you do? And the specialist is the one that will get the business, because people, when they have an issue, will want to call a specialist. Imagine you're a plaintiff's attorney and you represent someone who, I don't know, was hurt because their computer mouse exploded. So you start writing articles about how you represent people when their computer mouse explodes, and you become the attorney that's known for that. And so when people search for someone that does that, you're the only person that comes up. Everybody else is saying, oh, we do product liability. We do this, we do that. So you want to be seen. So just be seen as a specialist of some sort. It could be in any practice area, but that's something you need. And then this is just basic, but you need to be very familiar. And how do you become familiar? That means phone calls on birthdays. That's a big one. There's some attorneys that I know that every year will call me on my birthday, which is very nice. And it almost makes me embarrassed, but I almost know it's my birthday when I see their name coming up on my phone. I know other attorneys, one that I recently just hired that sends a long update about what he and his family are doing every year. I know other attorneys that will forward articles and so forth. And so all these things are to keep you familiar. And businesses, whether it's Coca-Cola or Amazon or whatever, they advertise. And they advertise because they want to be familiar. And you need to let people know you're there. So again, this is the example that I told you about getting in business. You just make contact with all the people, and that's the way to get work. And there's a book also called The Referral of a Lifetime. It has a similar system, but all this is just about, you need to make contact with people with familiar. And the same thing with existing clients. You can't just send people a bill and expect them to contact you. You need to be familiar. You just need to, if you're interested in doing a lot of work, but let's see, if you're not interested in doing a lot of work, you're often better off with smaller firms. Many times, if you're not interested in doing a lot of work, but want a title to make it appear like you're working, you're often going to be better in smaller firms. You just need to write articles about marketing, go to marketing seminars. You need to pick topics of interest. You need to always be learning. So I counsel people all the time about topics related to this. The big idea is you need to be learning all the time. You need to be out there, and you need to learn things about marketing that interest you. You can't just sit in an office and expect things to come to you. You don't have to. There's a million types of marketing. There's search engine marketing, there's referral marketing, there's content marketing, there's video marketing. Whatever type of marketing is interesting to you, you should do. You can't obviously do it all, but you need to do something to get out there. You need to build it into your routine. So just study this stuff in a way that suits you and read the stuff you're interested in, study the stuff, but all that stuff can help you. There's even copywriting, which I guess is how to write sales letters and so forth, which I don't think attorneys need to do. But honestly, if you want to, it's something that could help you too. You just need to study it. And the effort you put into it is going to make a huge difference. The other thing about getting business is it's something you can't quit. You need to succeed. And I'll just tell you one thing. Look, when I started and this is an old story, but I don't know why I'm telling it. And I don't know if I've ever told it, but when I was in the asphalt business, I first started with writing letters and Xerox and putting in people's mailbox about doing asphalt work for them. That worked okay. But it didn't work very well. Then I would try these mailers that would go out to these Valpak things where they put all these things and it goes out to every address in the city. And that didn't work very well. So then I started knocking on doors and that was even harder. But then I got better at knocking on doors. And so pretty soon, instead of knocking on 20 doors and not getting anybody interested, I would knock on 20 doors and have 18 people use. And it's because I learned the more rejection I got, the more I learned what to say and so forth. Present myself and giving deadlines saying I was only going to be on the street that day. So if they didn't use me that day, the next day they wouldn't get a chance and I would give them a discount because I was going to be in the mart area and all this stuff. But there were certain ways and I would always, I'd dress up and look nice and always make sure I was driving a card of the respectability and brochures. But I learned the whole method of doing things. So the things that you can't give up and one big client can change your entire life. So I know one woman in Chicago that brought in a major public company weeks before she was probably going to lose her job in a major firm, but suddenly she brings in this major public company. And then 2 years later, she's equity partner in the firm. If you get one big client, it can change your life and your career. And so you just need to keep with it. People do it all the time. I knew another partner when I was practicing in Los Angeles that didn't have any business and they'd asked me to leave. They gave him like a 3-month runway before he was leaving. All of a sudden he brought in a massive client that turned into this multi-million-dollar litigation and then he got a new job at a new firm. And so the guy was literally extremely depressed and playing, solitaire every day and brought it. So you just need to keep pushing. You need to keep, pushing. And when you have all these different contacts and if you do the things that I'm talking about, then you will constantly bring it. The phone could ring any second if you're putting down the right, branches and the roots. Again, as I said earlier, some of the biggest attorneys out there are the biggest social misfits you'll ever meet and the biggest nerd in LA, the guy with the most business. So it's just, none of this matters. You don't have to be extroverted or introverted. None of this matters. You just need to be someone that people believe in. All these relationships can take a long time, but you need to build time into your schedule to do it. Again, you need to keep trying all these other strategies. So just think about, I developed this business when I was in asphalt business that I got so good at it. It was incredible. Like I could literally go to 90% of the people would allow me to, I would go from door to door and I would start at 6 o'clock at night. And by 9 o'clock, I would have $12,000 or $15,000 worth of work to do the next day, which is incredible when you're in your 20s or early 20s to think about. But it was because every summer, I went through, I learned it all on my own and I didn't give up and I stuck with it because it was what I'd had. And so you need to do the same thing. You need to be resilient, really not give up and realize just because you fail once doesn't mean you're going to fail again. And again, all the self-confidence and stuff that I have today and all of my, whatever success that I've had in my life and career, a lot of it has come from learning how to bring in business like I did when I was younger. And because that gave me a lot of confidence. And I had the situation where after my first or second year of doing this asphalt business, I went at the end of the summer, I hadn't brought in, I basically failed. I'd broken down trucks and I don't know, I had a big spill on a road and all these horrible things happened. And then miraculously, I decided I was going to go back and just do the right thing and fix some of the jobs that I messed up because I didn't know what I was doing. And I met someone in a hardware store and I talked with him with a great deal of enthusiasm about, he was planning on doing this asphalt ceiling work on his condominium complex. And I told him exactly how to do it. And I went by and told him how much he should pay. And I didn't ask for business or anything. I just helped him because I knew so much about it. And I was in the process of doing something that was right. And he gave me this huge project where we're literally days before I was ready to go off to college with no money, I don't know, $3,000 or $4,000, which at the time was an incredible amount of money to me. So you can't give up. You just have to keep with it and realize that you will make mistakes trying to bring in business. And It's not easy, and you may try it for years doing one thing and you'll adapt your style, but you can't quit. You have to stick with it. And that's the resilience is a huge thing. You have to learn all this business stuff. The things I've talked to you about today, I think are very important. If you are listening to what I've said and this will be online again, and you ingest it and you think about it, it could change your life and your career. It could change your family's life. It could change your happiness, your self-respect, your all this stuff. The fact that once you bring in a good book of business, you don't have to be dependent on other people to give you work. Clients will come to you and and it's important. And the more business you generate, the more it continues to build upon itself. When I first started becoming a recruiter, I don't know what had happened, but I started I would throw myself into it and I talked about it and did all the things I'm doing right now because I really do love this profession. And I started getting a lot of calls from partners and law firms wanting to move. At the time, and when I was young, I thought, wow, this person's a partner at this major law firm. That's really special. I'm so lucky. I know all this sort of stuff. And I didn't even think about it. But if you want to make, say, $500,000 or $1 million as a partner, you typically need around 3 or 4 times whatever you want to make, or depends on the $3 million book of business may make you $1 million. It depends. So there's different rules and so forth. But most partners, if you want to get a job, they need to have at least, it's almost applying for a mortgage. They want to see how much business you've had and so forth. These are the rules it's generally in thirds. And it's always been that. A partner that wants to make 1.5 million might have 5 million business, something like that. It's just, these have always been the rules, but it's not cut and dry, but that's how it is. And so I would always receive lots of calls, partner from law firms, I still do to this day, that don't have a lot of business. A lot of them have children and so forth, and been practicing for a few decades. And one of the things that was very disturbing to me when I was young still is that there are partners that they may be income partners or whatever, but in major law firms that make less money than first year associates. It's hard to believe, but I've seen it and I continue to see it. And not as often as I did back then. We're talking a few decades ago, but it's true. I deliver stuff to their houses before interviews and stuff because I took the houses would be unkempt, and you meet them and they wouldn't have a lot of confidence. They had often been people that had probably been very confident when they were younger, but this kind of the energy was drained from them and they just didn't it's sad. I don't know what to say, but it's just the spark and stuff is all gone. Like, partners are always looking for jobs that don't have business, and it's hard for them. And when you don't have business, there are firms where it doesn't matter. And that's the first thing. There are firms where a partner can work without a business and it doesn't matter. But for the most part, eventually it catches up. You may be able to be a partner for 1 or 2 years in a firm without business, or even 5 or 10 sometimes. But eventually the law firm's going to come and be like, wait a minute, this person doesn't have any business. Why don't we just get an associate? It's cheaper. Or that's what they'll say. We've got this person coming up and they're hungry and they'll work harder. Why don't we give them the work and get rid of this person? So it's just, if you don't have business, that's what happens. I've had friends make partners in major law firms, and they make them income partners, and then they don't get any business, and then they ask them to leave, and then the person may start a divorce. It can be very unpleasant. Now, it's not always that case, of course. It's upsetting. But the point, I guess, that I want to make is that if you don't work in high school, you don't go to college, and then you don't get a good job, and then you wonder why life's unfair. And it's almost the same thing if you don't get business as an attorney. You don't advance, and then you wonder why life's unfair, and you lose your job, and all this stuff happens, and you're unhappy. So this is crucial. It's honestly one of the most important things you can do. And I believe in the law firm model, because in the law firm model, anybody can get business. There's so much opportunity out there. There's a profound amount of opportunity. Anyone can get business. Again, it doesn't matter your personality or anything. If you follow these rules, anyone can get business. But the problem is, if you don't get business, then you can go in-house, you can do all these things, but even that is not a secure position. It's just nothing is secure. The only security is when you have your own clients. And when you have your own clients, you can build a bigger and bigger book of business, and you can earn more and more money and more power and more and more self-reliance and career security and all sorts of things. And you can do that into your 80s and 90s. And it's what it's about. I don't know what to say, but if you learn how to do all this, your life is going to change. And I would hope that you understand that, because again, not getting business is the equivalent of not finishing high school and they're taking a job in a minimum wage job or something and bouncing around between low paying jobs and having a hard life. if you don't get business, you may have a very hard career. So I've seen this time and time again. Even if you're a very good attorney, you need to learn how to do this. And the rules are fairly simple. It's be nice to people, like be in touch with people, like be enthusiastic about your work, talk about it. Anything that I'm saying is not that complex. It's very sad. Okay. So it's just people, all these people like lose their job eventually if you don't have business. And and you don't think it's going to happen to you, but it's like smoking forever. You know, smoke forever, you may get cancer, you may not, but the odds are you probably will at some point if you smoke all the time and don't take care of yourself, or if you, I don't know, tons of cholesterol, and you're probably eventually going to have a heart attack. It's that with not having business. If you don't do this, you're eventually going to have major problems in your career. You may not, you may get lucky, but most people don't. And going in house isn't always easier. So I think the most important thing that anyone can do as an attorney is really develop business. It gives you secure, it gives you career portability. There's just so much to it. Your life and happiness are going to depend on it. You need to learn this skill. And if you don't, then I don't know. I can tell you that there's a lot of people that are in service partner roles that are very happy, well balanced, and can do well. And you can many times have security doing that, but for the most part, it often doesn't work. People can push you around. You're going to be at the mercy of your employer. It's just tough. It doesn't matter where you're at. I've seen partners, lots of people like make partner in major American law firms and making $1 million a year with no business, and they lose their jobs. And then they take an in-house job and it may be like paying a couple $100,000 a year. And then they lose that. And then they're like, what happened? And they can't, it's just, you got to take this stuff seriously. So you can do well, and you can you never know. And recessions happen, law firms shuffle things around and so forth. So I would hope for your sake, and I'm telling you this as someone that's done nothing for his entire career, I mean, except a couple of years of practicing law, at least, and watch this, that this is extremely important and arguably one of the most important things you could ever learn. So I'm going to take a quick break for a couple of minutes. And then when I come back, I will answer as many questions as everyone has. And this is a live webinar. So happy to answer any questions, whether it's about this presentation or anything else, any other questions you might have. Thanks. All right. Get these questions. We'll start. Okay. First one. So, let's work. We're talking. Move the bells to the right. Cool. Oh, that's it? Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so let's see here. So the first one, anyone who has moved before bonus time, have you been successful in using the offer time to get a better deal? I'm ready to get that out, regardless of the year on bonus. Year in this year is going to be named places in which you need someone now. And I'm curious if I could walk the line. Could we start in January 22? Bonus? No. Can you give me your bonus? Yeah. So a lot of firms are very busy right now. And if you ask, you can, many times they'll give you a bonus. The new firm will actually give you a bonus, or you can wait. But sometimes the new firm will give you a bonus, even though you're starting late. Otherwise, if it was me, I would probably wait. But some firms will give you a year of bonus even when you're starting. Other times, if you're working with a recruiter, you can negotiate getting a bonus now, as opposed to from the recruiter may be able to help you negotiate getting a bonus firm to start. And many times they will do that, especially when it's very busy. So that's something that does happen. Okay, let's see here. The next one. Speaking my fiance, we're good the same firm as me. I'm a 3L, just accepted an offer at a firm in a very small market. The office has fewer than 50 attorneys, and operates for a litigation team, which only has about 50 people, and I hire about one entry-level associate every year. My fiance is a year behind me in law school, so she's a 2. She's trying to get a job in the same city as me, which is again a very small market. She also wants a big litigation spot, which leaves very few options. My firm offered to a second-year job. They don't know that we're engaged. Can she accept the offer? Do we have to tell the firm? If so, do we have to tell the firm? How'd you get that conversation? I would let her get an offer. Oh, did she get an offer? Oh, she has a 2L job. They don't know. I wouldn't let anybody know about that during the summer. If it was me, you certainly can. And that's interesting. So you guys will be working fairly close together. It sounds like, actually you won't, because you're taking the bar this summer. I wouldn't make a big deal out of it. I understand the challenge there, because you guys are both 2Ls. You're both trying to work in a smaller city where there's not a lot of litigation openings. That's just a weird coincidence, but I wouldn't really make them aware of that at the moment. One thing I will say is that law firms, that does make law firms uncomfortable a lot of times when the two people are like that. And the reason is because what happens is as you're getting trained, like you will do things wrong, she will do things wrong. So the law firms, and one of you may want to quit or the other. And so the law firms they can have suddenly one of you goes bad in their eyes, then both of you will go bad. So that makes them nervous. And so that's something that I just would be careful about at this point. I'm not saying if it comes up, you certainly should bring it up to them, but for her sake, I don't know that you want to bring it up. And you may decide to go somewhere else later. But yeah, that's a big problem when two people are working together, especially if your relationship goes bad, then the firm can have problems. If one of you has problems with the firm, then there can be problems. It could be an issue putting you both on the same case with one partner because you guys may not like the partner. There's just all sorts of reasons that the firm would not like that. Some firms actually do have anti-nepotism policies. I don't know if that applies with fiancés and so forth. And I've been in lots of firms where partners and so forth are married to each other, associates are married. So I don't really see that being a problem, but I would be very careful about that at this point. If it was me, just because it could jeopardize your career opportunity to get a job. Next question. What does someone who wants to become a sought after employable attorney? I don't know if that means employable or employment. It doesn't matter what law school you went to. I know lots of people that are, the law school you went to really has nothing to do with whether or not you're sought after or employable. It may have to do when you get out of school, but you can develop your own practice. You can specialize in something. I know one of my friends is a very well-known immigration attorney. She went to not a top law school and learned how to do everything on her own, which is pretty incredible, but she's got a very good practice now. But when you look at most of the most famous attorneys who you may have heard of, personal injury and all these other things, most of them didn't go to the best law schools. The best thing you can do if you want to become a sought after attorney is just throw yourself into what you're doing and learn about it and then develop business and all the things that I'm talking about. I think can be very helpful. But I think those are some of the most important things. I personally do not think if you went to a top law school, you may think differently about this, but I do not think that the law school you went to really has all that much to do with in terms of what happens to people in the long run. There's so many other so many other things that are involved in becoming successful, which have to do with, which have to do with things like your persistence and sticking with it, your ability to generate business, whether or not people like you after a period of time, how much you learn and everything. So just because you didn't go to law school doesn't matter. The only time it matters is when you're coming out and trying to get a job paying a lot of money. But in the long run, it's not something that's going to make a big difference. Let's see here. I received less than ideal GPA in law school due to health concerns, and now I'm recovered but have a lower GPA. And a 1-year gap. Yeah, an LLM can help you get in the door if it's in a practice area that is going to be helpful for you. It depends on the practice area. LLMs are not good. So if you want to be like an education lawyer or something, and you have an education background, and maybe an education LLM could be helpful. Or if you have a healthcare background, health be helpful. Or if you have a tax, it could be helpful. But just because you didn't get a great GPA in law school, most of the best attorneys did not give a lot of the best attorneys didn't get the best GPA. So your grades, these are things you learn in the long run, the longer you're practicing in terms of how to be a good attorney and so forth. I think that your GPA really makes a difference. I think you can always get a job with a law firm. There's tons of law firms out there that would be interested in you regardless of where you went to law school. So I don't think LLM is going to help you. In many cases, I think LLMs hurt because they can make you look academic. They delay your timing of starting and so forth with a firm, that sort of thing. But certain schools, like certainly there's good LLMs out there and different things. But I just get an LLM, the grades are typically inflated in LLM programs, and I don't think it's going to help you get in the door. I think what you need to do if you want to get a good job is to really try to apply to a lot of places. Just make sure that you're doing the best you can. Getting a bad GPA in law school, frankly, that's something they use in major markets, but most attorneys really, it's not the most important thing for most law firms is your grades. It's only a way for them when a large law firm has hundreds of people applying for a job, they need something to eliminate people with. But after that's really it. And they don't need to, when the market's tight and there's a lot of people competing for jobs, then they don't need to, they're not going to try to eliminate you based on your grades. So grades are really used to, which is important for everyone on the call to understand. They're used to if you're applying for very competitive jobs, which a $200,000 a year job for a first year associate is a competitive job. But if you're not, then the grades aren't going to be as big of an issue. And there's a lot of law firms looking for people. You just need to be able to get out there and find them. And yeah, I graduated from a top 14 law school without a job line in May 2021. After the bar exam, I then applied to every relevant posting I saw and mass mailed many firms. Although I have had many interviews the past 2 weeks, I haven't had much luck so far. It's now mid-November and most of my classmates have started working at their firms. Many have told me that the market is really good right now and that corporate practice areas are mass hiring, but I don't see many postings for entry-level hires for first-year associates. Thus, I'm wondering if you have any helpful tips or strategies on how to proceed. My career services office is not too helpful and discourage mass mailing. I don't know. I have mass mail firms in contact with their recruiters, but I usually get told just to check on the firm's career opening page and see what's available or that they are hiring. And then even for the most junior associate required, let's choose it. Okay. So here's the problem. So the first thing is that's great. You're going to, if you went to a top 14 law school, the problem with a lot of the major law schools is that most of the major law firm, first of all, corporate practice areas are typically done by large firms. And most large firms hire out of their summer associate programs. So and you're also trying to get jobs in major law firms. But I can tell you, so I used to have a business that would help attorneys mass mail their resumes. I don't do it anymore just because a lot of reasons, but it worked incredibly well. If you went to law school ranked 250 or 300, it worked for everybody. The problem with people that a lot of times go to top 15 law schools and so forth, or these big law schools, is they're only applying to the big firms or the ones that everyone, in a market the size of Los Angeles or New York or Chicago or almost every large city, there's thousands and thousands of law firms, but people are only thinking of the largest ones. If you contact these law firms, most of them do not have their jobs on their website. You need to contact a lot of them. You need to contact, in a market like Los Angeles, if I had a candidate to do a mass mailing, probably recommend 500 to 1,200 firms. The person might get 10 to 15 interviews. And yeah, you have to contact a lot of people. You have to stop worrying about working in these largest firms and all sorts of things. All I do is get people jobs, and I place hundreds of people per year. And I can tell you that, and that's just me personally. And not only that, I'm not bragging. I'm just telling you that this is how it works. And these are the laws of getting a job. There's a lot of places out there that you're probably missing. I have a staff of over 100 people that are that are doing nothing but researching firms. And then we're doing it in automated fashions. There are so many firms out there, it would blow your mind. Like there's firms that are on list that you can find publicly, which are the ones that your law school probably has. Then if you do a search on Google in most areas, there's lots of firms that aren't in these lists because firms have to pay to be on lists. There's so many firms. I find firms on resumes, tens of thousands of law firms, hundreds of thousands of them, actually. And if you look at firms that are more than a couple people, like there are so many freaking firms out there, like you will get a job. And I hate seeing emails like this because people are just following this sort of thing. Mass mailing your resume or mass contacting people works. If you're applying for jobs that like everyone else is, and you're applying to job postings, no one cares where you went to law school. They just care about whether or not you can do the job, and they care about what your resume looks like compared to other people. I don't know what your resume looks like, and it's none of my business, but it is my business. But if your resume just had your law school, your whatever, some easy experience, and your resume was okay, then you would get plenty of interviews. But you have to apply to lots of places. Your law school services office is discouraging mass mailing. I'm not sure. What are they encouraging? Unemployment? Doesn't make any sense. I hate these kind of statements. You have to mass mail people. You have to contact recruiters. If you're applying to job postings, remember you're competing with people that probably already have jobs or have had summer associate jobs, but you still should apply to those. There are jobs for people with just limited experience. You need to learn what you're doing wrong. You need to read about interviewing. You need to read about the stuff that I'm talking about in these calls, but you should read all the articles I've written. But the point is, you should be able to get a job, and you have to, everyone on this call, if you ever think you're having a hard time getting jobs, like there are so many firms. It's astonishing. You should apply to firms in areas where you grew up. You should apply to firms in areas where you went to school. You should apply to firms wherever you want to live. You should apply to firms in the whole state where you have a bar. Like there's so many opportunities, but you need to do it. And you can't worrying about the firm you're applying to. You just need to get out there and get experience. I know people that have gone to, I know one guy that went to, where'd he go to school? I don't know, like Stanford or something, and he didn't get a job. I don't know why. And then he started off in a very small firm, just like you. And now he's a partner in one of the largest, most prestigious law firms in the world. And it took him like 6 months to get a job. And he thought, oh, I'll just do it on campus. And then I don't know, you need to, everyone on this call, there's nothing, you're an attorney and you're representing yourself. So you need to go out and you need to research, you need to find places and do this. It makes me angry when I see stuff like this because you're exactly the kind of person that my power is my existence because I don't like seeing people unemployed when they can get jobs. So this is what you need to do. And there's so many opportunities out there. It's loony, but they're not just in corporate. The most popular practice area is litigation. So corporate represents companies and the most corporate jobs. Corporate are mass hiring, but they're mass hiring in large law firms. So if you're not in a large law firm, whatever, something may have happened to you early in your career. You didn't get a job offer. That's fine. You can fix all this in the long run. It doesn't matter. Everyone learns at different pages or paces. If you're 25 years old, you could do this job for the next 50 or maybe even 75 years. I've seen attorneys that are 100. So you're one quarter through your life and your career is just starting. So, and you have 3 more quarters to go. So just don't get psyched out by any of this. Just stay in the game and don't worry about it. But you just have to keep pushing. Sorry, this makes me mad when I hear people telling people not to mass apply to firms. Why not? What is the logic that if you're known, if you applied someplace that's going to hurt you, what the it makes no sense to me. Someone telling you not to mass apply means basically saying it's that sounds more like that's about your school, not wanting to know that you're unemployed as opposed to you. Because what can possibly hurt you that you're applying somewhere and being seen? Because I've hired people that apply to me all the time with unsolicited resumes. It's the best way because when I see an unsolicited resume, I'm like, wow, this person took the time to contact me. They're interested in me. That if it's personalized, you know what? I am looking for someone like this. I'm going to talk to this person. I saw a guy give a presentation the other day just about something and it's not even related to using an executive. And I'm like, I could use an executive like that. And he just happened to be needing the job. So it's just, you have to get out there and be seen by an employer to be prepared to reason through a legal issue and an interview I have upcoming. Do you have any experience of what that could even mean? I'm a rising 2L if that helps. I generally know nothing. No, they're just going to ask you. I have no idea what that means, but it's basically they're probably just going to ask you how you would respond or think through an issue. So you have to use the tools that you already have, which are where you have an issue, whatever the issue presented, facts. I don't even remember how to answer those sorts of questions, but however you would ask IRAC, I think something like that, or is that IRAC? I don't even remember. Issue, rule, analysis, conclusion, something like that. That's probably all they're asking. And if you can do that, you'll probably be in good shape. Let's see. Okay, so what? I'm still mad about that former person's question of the school is telling them not to apply to jobs. That's a great idea. Yeah, don't apply to firms and stay unemployed and hope you can support your family and pay your student loan. It makes no sense. I moved to Florida, to Boston as a construction litigator. I know a lot of firms say that, some schools say that to people. I moved from Florida to Boston as a construction litigator. I joined a boutique that is extremely unorganized and I'm not happy with the firm. It's also hard to get out and rainmake, which is something I want to do. Okay. I found another insurance defense firm that defends a lot of self-insured. They also do some construction litigation, seem to keep up, especially. I have an interview with them after Thanksgiving and explore my options. There are not a lot of construction litigation openings at the firm. Now, I'm also not 100% confident, but I love construction law. I liked it in Florida because it was a good firm, but here I'm not thrilled. It is terrible if I go back to insurance defense. I want to ask any firm about rainmaking opportunities because I do want to do that. Okay, so the best way first of all, construction litigation is a very good practice area. It's a more active practice area than just regular insurance defense. So that's just something to think about. And typically the more specialized your practice area, the better off you're going. So that I would just think about that. So being a construction litigator is probably a little bit better for you than maybe doing insurance defense, but that's just up to me. Just because there are a lot of construction litigation openings. I'm going to say this, the same thing I said to the other person. If you research all the construction firms that do construction litigation and you contact them and ask them if they have any openings, my guess is that a majority of them will say, we'd love to look at your resume. And then you can send the resume. If you're uncomfortable just send in your resume. If you do send your resume, I'm pretty confident you'll get interviews. If you don't love construction law, I don't know why. The quality of the firm, liking it matters, but it's certainly not terrible if you don't like it. If you prefer insurance defense, there's nothing wrong with insurance defense, and that's definitely a active, ongoing practice area. But I would be to the extent you can, I would be careful about switching practice areas if that's something you're thinking about doing, because construction law, in my experience, is a very good practice here. And it's probably better in Florida and places like Florida and Texas and other places where they're doing a lot of new construction as opposed, and I know they're doing construction in Boston, but areas like Florida and Texas are booming. So it can be a very good practice in other parts of the country as well. But from what I've seen, law firms are having a very difficult time finding construction litigation attorneys. And I do think you could find another construction litigation firm if you liked it. And then I don't know about the rainmaking opportunities, but yeah, I think you can ask them about that. But I would be careful about anytime you have a specialty like construction law, that it's just a very good practice area. And once you get into insurance defense, you probably can still do that, but it would depend on the type of insurance defense. So I would just be careful. I hope that helps. That was a good question. That's sorry, give me 1 second. Okay. Let's see. Started my patent career overseas and fully licensed here, qualified and did California bar exam. I studied at U.S. law schools, strong technology background, worked at a few law firms in California. Great. I managed to pass the California bar exam last year. Having passed the patent exam years ago, some seem to have been setting me up, particularly to fail in becoming licensed in the U.S. before finishing my GD, which explained why both schools desperately want me finished. And several firms saying, I'll learn I might take a bar exam. I completed all the California mission requirements as well as 6 months to restart my GD application. That employed for a while. But I'm employable to patent agent or tech specialist. How should I navigate the move around those other potential roadblocks? Yeah, so I would continue working as a patent agent. And then I don't know what's going on with these law schools. Once you get your law degree, then you can work as a patent attorney. I will tell you that a lot of patent attorneys prefer to work as patent agents. Sometimes law firms may not want you to work as a patent attorney because they have to pay you more, for example, but I would continue working as a patent agent. Once you pass, then the California bar, then I think you should be certainly get jobs as a patent attorney. So it looks, you shouldn't have too much of a problem, but in all honesty, patent agents in the US can do very well. So a lot of times they can make extremely good incomes and often even have more employment stability than attorneys. That can be, okay, let me see. It looks like about one of the last questions. Let me ask this question. Yeah, let's see. What are some key questions that attorney should ask before accepting a job offer at a law firm? One of the best things you can do before accepting a job offer depends on the law firm, but if you have to ask lots of questions, you may ask the firm what's happened, the person that you hired, what has happened with the person I'm replacing, or what do people typically do after this that don't stick around? And so answering those questions are always a good idea because you typically want to go to work at a firm where good things happen with the people that are leaving. So if you don't know about the firm, then you should try to learn that information in the future. So you'd want to know, most law firms have similar vacation policies and all that sort of thing. But in terms of what is it that happens to people that work there in the long term, what happens to their careers and so forth, those are questions always, but you may want to ask them about that. And you can often tell if they smile and they give you very positive answers or they look very uncomfortable. You don't want to go someplace like there's law firms where you may be asked to work with a partner that fires everyone within a year or things like that happen. So you just want to make sure that if you're hired by that firm, good things will potentially happen to you in the long run. That would be, so I would ask, what has happened to people that have done this job in the past? So that's a question that most people don't answer and I think could be helpful. Okay, this looks like it's the last question, which is one I'm excited about. So looks like a good one. So let's see. So what are some good career choices for attorneys looking for a career change? If you don't want to be an attorney anymore, really the nice thing about being an attorney, you can do lots of different things. I think attorneys can be good at sales. They can be good. I was talking to an attorney today that I really liked, and I thought that she was almost too happy to be an attorney. I told her she could be in HR and recruiting. This is the kind of job you can do, where you can counsel attorneys. I've seen attorneys become very good. Sometimes attorneys will go to school and become a therapist or something like that. Attorneys will often go into sales. Some attorneys become writers. One of the attorneys, I sold a house once to an attorney that wrote this book called Con Air. I went to my law school. You can really do all sorts of things with a law degree. And attorneys often do very well in other careers because it's such a competitive profession. So I think you really, the most important thing you can do as an attorney is really try to ask yourself what interests you, what you prefer to be doing, or what are the topics and things what are the things that interest you the most? And then once you come up with that, then you can follow your career path. But attorneys do all sorts of things. And I've seen attorneys open up ice cream stores, and it depends on what your passion is. I saw another attorney open a bike store. It depends on what's motivating you, but something for what you do, whatever you do, you should love and you should be interested in and you should feel enthusiastic about. And if you find something like that, then that's always going to be very powerful. Okay, thank you for being on the call, and I appreciate everyone listening today. That's about it. And next week is the day before Thanksgiving, so I don't think we'll have a call then, but I'll be back the following week. Thank you.